Oh, cheers, YouTube. Cheers. What's this? Okay, there you go. Cheers to that too. Ah, want to see what comes up. Let's see how many freaks we got. I have to say something real quick. I just saw a picture of the guy from Tim and Eric Awesome Show. Tim? I think it's Tim. One of them. The fat guy with the glasses. That one. He has a picture with him with like a 15-year-old girl or a seemingly underage girl in a hotel room. And the person who took the picture says that he gave him alcohol and beer and pot and stuff. So all I'm going to say right now is that whole Dan Harmon, just Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon stuff in general is getting worse. These people seem like they're like pedophiles, that they are into that stuff, and it makes sense that people with those inclinations would put themselves in positions near children, especially someone at such a powerful position like creating the content for children during their formative years. It's a really influential time in their lives that they're watching these cartoons, and they're basically creating the formative perspectives that will, last with them forever until they die, right? So this idea of people who love pedophile humor and are maybe pedophiles themselves working in this industry of creating children's content is asinine. And I don't know what else to think about it, but it's just that it's pure evil. Absolutely pure evil. I can't see anything else it would be. Now, it could all be just hearsay, right? But I don't think so. I think that a lot of these people are they are the legacy. It's the legacy of the sexual revolution. These people who believe that so-called consensual sex outside of marriage, as long as it's consensual, it's fine. There's big problems with this. Really simple one to start off is that these people don't realize, or most people don't realize, that these guys are in a position to completely influence these children. It doesn't matter if the content doesn't directly address these disgusting points of view, but the fact that it's in the person's mind, it's going to come out on the show somehow. You see, the glory, I'm sorry, the legacy, not the glory, but the legacy of the sexual revolution is to basically destroy, it's to destroy the semblance of sex between a married man and a married woman that are both married with each other, right? They want to basically destroy that so that there's free love. The problem with this, though, is the minute you go outside the bounds, right, of the married couple, you're going to have no recourse to end. It's going to keep going on like a slippery slope. But you might say, oh, well, we could cut it off at consensual relations. But the problem is right now is the big problem is, what is the nature of consent, and what is the difference between consent from adults and children? Because these people argue that children give consent, therefore, or they can, therefore, they can have these kinds of relationships with adults. I think the whole problem is going outside of the marriage. The minute you say that any kind of sex outside of marriage is okay, you're going to get people that are going to push the boundaries, and they're going to, find loopholes and say, well, this person's consenting, or why is it so important that it needs to be an adult if it's all about love and shit? This is the problem. It's not going to end. It really is. And we need to return to Christianity. The reason for that is because our civilization was founded on on Christianity. Just take for instance the founding of America. The other day I was looking up how the difference in, I live in New Jersey, so we have different kinds of municipality names like township, town, borough, village. So I was looking through all of them, just trying to figure out what their differences are, because I live in a township myself. And reading about it, I'm like, oh, it seems that the way these Dutch colonialists and English colonialists would create towns would be like the whole town would be centered around the church, so that the church was the center of civic life, right? It was the reason why everyone was there. They all went to the same church. Now, today, most people aren't religious in the United States, or at least they may believe in a higher power, but they're not. They don't, go to services or consider themselves part of any congregation. And we can see this as a weakening of the bond that kept people together when they came to these towns and created these towns that we know today. All of them. I mean, just look at in the 50s, right? 50% of New York City was Roman Catholic. Now it's probably less than 10. So what we see from there is that this separation from our heritage of how we created this civilization and created this culture and governmental structure was all based on religion, because everyone was religious. Everyone went to the same church. Now what happens is, when we start to go away from that, these structures that we had, like marriage or civil society, start become questionable. It's like, well, why do we need marriage, or why do we need civil society? And the idea is that, well, that was useful back in the day, but it's not useful now. Really? You say it wasn't useful before. I mean, that it's not useful now, but it was useful before. As if it was completely pragmatic how we came about the things we did. No, it wasn't pragmatic. We were following a way of life that was directed towards us. And if we ignore that, we're going to question why we have these societal structures. And eventually society will collapse. It just has to go that way, because once you get rid of the heart, the foundation of society, which is Christianity for Western culture, everything else becomes suspect. Because if you don't have Christianity there, then it's like, why do we need marriage? Why do we need civil society? Why do we even need the kinds of dynamic societal relationships that we have now? All this stuff was rooted in Christianity. And so what we're going to see right now is a complete destruction of this kind of way of life. And people believe there's something on the other side, but there really isn't. There's nothing. All there is on the other side is just human ineptitude, selfishness, and despair. That's all there is. Because humans are flawed. We're flawed. I mean, people love, we define what is human. Almost all types of definitions, people keep using the term, the definition that humans are flawed. That, you say, well, he's only human, she's only human. I mean, like they're not perfect. Well, with this understanding, how can we try to create a societal system off of an imperfect foundation? So the only way society can be structured is under God. Without, then it's just every man for himself, and there's going to be no harmony outside of, like, well, we would call it illusions of harmony, right? Illusions of control or civil society. I'll give you an illusion. An illusion would be something like Nazi ideology. That's an illusion of civil society. They say we're creating a civil society, but in order to do that, we have to kind of ethnically cleanse the populations. So I'll give you an little example of how much Christianity plays into the Western world, and that without Christianity, the Western world ceases to be Western. You have the virtue of compassion, right? The virtue of turning the other cheek, the virtue of like not looking for increased violence, but trying to squash beef, trying to, bring up peace in the world. Helping the poor is a big part of this, right? Helping people who are in need, people that you could obviously take over and control, but that who need your help some way, and that you give them their help free of charge, right? Not because there's some kind of string attached. That virtue specifically comes from Christianity, and no other worldview supplies that. For instance, think of in India with the Hindu caste system. There's a term there that says that the tears of strangers are only water. And so you can see that in other places of the world, such a thing as compassion just didn't make any sense. It was like, take care of your family and your people and forget about everybody else. To hell with them. Don't get in their way, but also don't help them. But Christianity was very different in the sense like we need to help those people. Those are all children of God who have been lost and need to be brought back. And God wants to bring them back, even though they've like spit in God's face. And that's why the story of the prodigal son is so important, as that's a little microcosm of our situation where we basically took our fortune, which is our free will, and we said, fuck you, God. We're going to choose our own way of life and our own happiness and we're going to choose for ourselves, for each one of ourselves, not collectively, but we're going to choose for each one of ourselves individually what is right and what is wrong. And so that was much like the boy in the prodigal son taking the fortune. Our fortune was our will, our freedom to choose for ourselves. And what happens at the end? We realize that we squandered it, that it really was made for a purpose, but we were so prideful that we thought that we were the be all end all. And what happens at the end? We're on our knees asking to be the lowest slave back in our Father's house. And instead of, either turning us away, saying, well, I told you so kind of thing, which any human would do. Instead, the Father's like, bring him back, kill the fattest lamb, bring him the robes, like, let's have a party. My son's back home, even though the son literally like disgraced his father. It's like that is not human. Okay. That's not human. That doesn't exist in nature. That doesn't exist. That idea of like selflessness and like the father had every right under natural law to shun his son and to really push him away and say, you're never going to be part of me. You threw it all away. Fuck you. You squandered it. So that level of compassion for a person that, for forgiveness, right? For redemption, that the person who did you every wrong capable, but you're still going to bring them back. That's a uniquely Christian value and doesn't come from any other worldview. I'll give you a small example. So you have people, let's say, helping an old lady cross the street, right? That seems to be virtuous. Now, in Christianity, it's virtuous because the woman can't help herself and you're able to, so you want to help them. That's, it's compassion. Whereas in other, let's say, like a Norse mythology, like the Viking world, right? The Vikings, you wouldn't help the old lady because she needs help. Who gives a fuck about it? What you would do, though, is help the old lady to make yourself look good. Be like, look at me, I'm so virtuous, I'm so strong, I'll help the weak. It's because I'm only so strong. Christianity is great to take away that ego in people. And that's why it's at the foundation of our Western civilization. If we were just pagans like we were before, we would have never had science, because pagans can't touch nature. You can't fuck with nature. Nature's God, right? Nature is made of different spirits and gods. How dare you experiment on nature? Like, it doesn't make any sense. We would have stayed conjuring up spirits or whatever, as opposed to building and learning about the material world and science and advancing it. Christianity was the religion of all the first scientists. They were all Christians because they wanted to know creation. They wanted to learn about God's creation and be able to, like Newton said, think God's thoughts after him, so that in understanding for instance, the structure of the solar system, he can comprehend God's thoughts, because you're outlining and tracing God's creation, and then in doing so, you're like, oh my God, this is what he's thinking about, and this is how his perspective, so to speak, and that's powerful. The fact, science can't explain this. The fact alone Science rests on two assumptions that are rarely ever like brought to light. The first assumption is that the universe is intelligible, that the fact that we can look out into the universe and actually comprehend something. There's absolutely no proof of it. There's nothing in science that shows that when we comprehend something, we truly are. There's a thought experiment called the Boltzmann brain. And in the Boltzmann brain, it says that if we have a multiverse, right, a system of many different universes with all different kinds of complexities, from very complex to not so complex, what you're going to have is an abundance of universes that are very simple. And that these simple universes are going to outnumber the so-called complex universe we live in, right? So it's the multiverse system. And the thought experiment says that, well, if we are in this kind of infinite multiverse ensemble, right, and that most of these universes would be low grade, like not like maybe the size of our solar system as opposed to the size of the universe, like a size of like a planet, right? That these simple universes should be way more in abundance than the complex one we have. And then on top of that, something called the Boltzmann brain would be much more likely to pop into one of these universes and believe that it's in a larger, more expansive universe than it is in now, right? So the idea is that if you believe in the multiverse, then it is infinitely or probably infinitely more likely that you are a Boltzmann brain pretending like having the illusion that you are in a bigger universe with other observers, but in reality it's just you. And you're in a very small universe that just appears to be bigger because of your ignorance and your, the illusions presented towards you. So the idea there is that if you believe in the multiverse, like many atheists do, you are much more likely a Boltzmann brain than an actual observer in the universe with other observers and 100, 200 billion light years across. It's really much more likely that you are a single observer having hallucinations of other observers in a world that seems consistent in a universe that's probably only the same size as the solar system. So what we're trying to get at there is that this idea that without Christianity, the world's fine. It's just, no. Without Christianity, nothing makes sense at all. Nothing. That's why all art without Christianity just all goes to despair. I mean, read Proust, In Search of Missing Time. He's just trying to, basically, it's a book about him trying to get happy. And he can't. He tries love, tries art, he tries money or materialism. Nothing gets there. There's a little bit of a redeeming at the end, but the idea is that nothing in material reality can give you that satisfaction. By the way, that's another argument for God because, could you be thirsty for something that didn't exist? Now think about it real, like if water didn't exist, could you get thirsty for it? It seems like you could only become thirsty or desire things that exist, right? Or at least potentially exists. Like, you want a unicorn. A unicorn's potentially possible. It's a horse with a horn. It's possible, right? That exists. So your desire is always connected to something that's possible. Our desire for spiritual connectedness and the fact that you can, keep us satiated on our sensory level with food and sex and all that other stuff, but that there's going to be a part of us that wants something more. And that more doesn't seem to be connected to any single thing like a power status or an object that we can own. And so the fact that we have that desire for something, that is kind of like a proof of God, because it's like, well, what the hell are we desiring? How can we desire something that doesn't exist? Now, it'd be really fucked up if humans are for some reason desiring something that just didn't exist. Now, that doesn't make any sense from an evolutionary biological standpoint, right? Why would we have a need for something that doesn't exist? Like, where would we even get the need from if it can never be reached? It just doesn't make sense. The fact that we have a need for transcendence shows that there is something like God out there that we can connect with and merge with, or not merge, I'm sorry, but become friends with. You were created by the creator of the whole universe. You think about it, the person who put the universe together created you and knows your name specifically, knows everything about you, and has a plan for you specifically. And I'm like, well, there's 7 billion humans on the planet. How special can I be, right? And the idea there is that, well, God isn't like a normal person, right? God can we'll call it geometrically available, right? That it'd be multiple places at once and having multiple streams of information coming in at one time, so that the idea is that God could be in multiple places at once, obviously, right? It's not like God can only listen to one person at a time. I mean, it's fucking God, for God's sakes, right? It's not going to be like a human. It's not going to be limited by those things. And, I used to think of it like that God was lonely and he wanted to, like, create humans so he could kind of, have someone there. But now it's, like, even way more bugged out than that, because what you realize is that not so much that God put himself there because he's like, I'm lonely, I need a friend. It's not that. It blew my mind when it hit me. It's like God is sharing something that's beautiful. Like he's selfless. So he's like, listen, I'm having a great time right now. He's not having a bad time. He's having a great time. He's God. He's in the triune Godhead. He has perfect relationship with the Father and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. There's perfect relationship there. By the way, that's how you know that. Every other conception of God is like a unitary figure, like a man on a throne, like a king, whereas God is like three persons in one, which at first seems like, oh, that's ridiculous. But then when you think about it, wait. If you were perfect, right? Part of being perfect, part of human need, right, is to have a relationship. So if you were a perfect, in some kind of perfected eternal state, you're going to be connected with another. You're going to be in a relationship. You're not going to be like isolated. So God's in this perfect relationship with the Holy Spirit and the Son, and just saying, like, I'm having a great time. I'm having such a fun time that this would be a greater time if I can, or not even greater, because that's assuming like he needs it. He doesn't need it, but that he is so selfless that he's like, listen, I got to give this away. This is just too good for me to have on my own. Like this, this because I'm a selfish person. I grew up an only child. I didn't have to share a lot of stuff. So just the idea of just like giving up like that, just being like I don't need to have like that. This is because I think most humans, if we find something that's really good, that's helping us, that's just great, we kind of want to hold on, especially if it's something that we could lose. We want to hold on to it and not let it go and just protect it from other things. And the idea is not share it, right? But with God, he's like, I want to share this beauty that I'm experiencing. So he creates humans, and according to him, the risk of having some humans fall to the wayside is very worth it. People would ask me, like, God should be smart enough to know that many humans aren't going to listen to him. So it's like, why did he go on with it? And I think it's because he thinks it's worth it. That it's the value is so great that if it doesn't matter if some people fall to the wayside, that even if only one person gets to heaven, that it's worth it. That it makes up for all those other people who didn't come. And this is what we're removing in our society. And I hate this idea. People think, oh, I could have morality without God and religion. Like, sure, you can know what's right without God. You don't need to go to church to know what's a right thing to do. That it's not right to hurt somebody. Stuff like, you don't need to go to church for that. What you do need church for, though, and God, is to ground that. Because at the end of the day, if no one catches you and it helps you, why is it so bad, right? I mean, you might say, I'm not like that. I'm not an asshole. I mean, at the end of the day, if it's all about survival and no one knows, of course you're going to, cut a couple of corners for yourself. It just makes perfect sense. It doesn't make any sense. If it's all going to end, right? If at the end of the day, the king, the beggar, and the wise man all ended up as a pile of bones, right? If that's your belief, where we all end up as bones, then why would it be a bad thing to just kind of cut corners for myself so I can gain a little more? Because at the end of the day, we're just turning to shit anyway. It's all just a fucking epiphenomenal fluke of the cosmic realm. I just do whatever you want, right? Reality is what you can get away with. And that's what you're going to get when you remove Christianity. Now, the beautiful thing is that our God's great. And he knows that most people today are thinkers, right? Actually, let me put that back. That many people today are thinkers. And so he says that, well, most people don't like Christianity because they think it's not a thinking man's religion. That it's one of those things like leave your brain, check your brain at the door before you enter church, right? Let's say like you leave your coat or your hat, leave your brain at the door. It's like, no, it's not that at all. God created, he's so great that he allows people to find him either through like how most people like, through like emotions and connections and stuff like how, or people like myself who are like too intellectual, and he gives us like a bunch of information. Like, look at this guy, Jesus' life. There's more evidence for his life than Julius Caesar, than Alexander the Great, than Plato, than Aristotle. So it's like, if you're going to believe, Homer existed, then you have to believe Jesus existed, because there's more evidence for Jesus existing than any other person in the Greco-Roman world, bar none. This is coming from an Oxford scholar, a classicist in Oxford, saying that in the Hellenistic realm, which is the Greco-Roman world, there is no more a document, like there's no better documentation of a life than Jesus Christ. That's just, and then you want to deny that? Like, Jesus spoke in parables for a reason. This is so fucking deep. He spoke in parables because he said, they asked him, he's like, why do you speak in parables? Why don't you just tell us like reality stories, instead of just saying like, once upon a time kind of deal. And he says, well, it's because I know that most of you aren't going to listen to me, so that in order to lessen your punishment in hell, he says, I'm going to lead some of you to believe that what I'm saying is only stories, so that when judgment comes, you will be less, your punishment will be lessened, because you would have believed that it was just a story. But if you actually knew this was true and you ignored it, that puts you in a deeper place in hell, right? And so Jesus was telling parables in order for most people to just got to get off the hook. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, it's just like, that's how passionate he is. He's like, I know you're still not going to listen to me, but let me at least lessen your pain and suffering in the afterlife. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And notice. These people were talking here. What's this? Oh, that's nice. I love how people are like using my scope to talk to other people about like joining scopes. Anyway, so you can't destroy the foundation of Western society without having it completely blow up in your face, and then you realize what made America so fucking special to begin with. But hey, if that's the only way you could figure out what makes American special is by destroying it, so be it, right? That's the only way you'll realize that, wow, we fucked up. We had a really good system, and we just gave it all up to be like the rest of the world. And that's going to be an issue. And I really feel sorry for those that... Actually, no, I take that back. I don't feel sorry at all. I just like talking. So that's what's going to happen when you destroy the value system that this Western society was built upon. And this Western society is at the basis of all other societies. I mean, no, wait, that didn't come out right. At the basis of all other societies. Oh, let me fix something here. Okay, so no, it's not at the basis of all other societies. Western civilization is God marching through the world. That's what it is. God taking a stroll through time, right? That's Western civilization. We're going to lose all that. Look, Western civilization did not start in Europe. Don't forget that. Don't think that, oh man, Western civilization, white people. No, man. Jesus was a Jew. He was an Arab, big-nosed, Semitic, brown-skinned Jew. He didn't look Italian. He didn't look German. He didn't look English. Western civilization did not start in Europe. It actually started in the Middle East, Mesopotamia. So for you people who believe that destroying the Western Judeo-Christian system is some kind of justice, what you're actually doing is removing justice from the world. You're getting rid of justice by getting rid of the Judeo-Christian system. But I totally believe that it will happen. It will happen. I think it's like prophecy, you know? Things are going to get worse before they get better. And so for a bunch of people to just lose the faith like this, and it's something like 75 to 80%, even more, of the children, Christian kids who go to college completely lose their faith. But literally, like by their third month, like still like in like November of their first semester, they're already like atheist or you know, questioning it. I'm like, oh my God, I never thought about these things. And you know, there's a lot to blame there. I think a lot to blame is the church, because they don't, you know, youth pastors are too concerned with, you know, the next fun activity that all the kids are going to, like some movie or some game that everyone can play, as opposed to like teaching them like how to like defend their beliefs and be like, okay, you're going to go into a world that doesn't like you, that's hostile. Like show them scripture that says, like Jesus said, if you follow me, you will face tribulation, you will face condemnation, you will face persecution. Like, you know, if you're following me to get the easy road, like that's not what you want to be. Like this is about truth, about everything. I think that's what Christianity is about. It's about truth. It's about truth. It's not about like rituals and people's names or stupid like church name. No, it's all about truth. Do you care about the truth in the world? Do you care that Christianity is the only uniquely historical religion that the so-called deity was on this earth and was able to influence more people than anybody else on this planet? More people know Jesus' name than anybody else. Yet Jesus only was around in ministry for 3 years. He didn't move 20 miles from his home. He didn't know how to read or write. He didn't go to school. He didn't start an army. He didn't have any weapons. He didn't have any fucking children. This guy was by all means a bum, a complete bum. And yet this complete bum was able to completely change the course of global history within a short 300 years, going from some guy talking to some people in Jerusalem to the largest empire of the land saying, whoa, we got to like adhere or like, you know, respond to these Christians. They're like going, and it was without any war. It was no like great Christian war. This is all before the Crusades and everything, you know, before they were established. And this needs an explanation. It's not just like, wow, they got lucky. It's like, no. We're talking about something that changes people from the inside out. You show me something else that literally changes people, that people were like one way and then they find you and they completely change. There's nothing like that. There's nothing that people completely change over, and that's truth. It's all about individuality, about each person making that decision. You can't just be like, well, I'm part. It's not like we're Jews, right? And it's like, well, we're a Jew. You're already saved. You're chosen. It's like, no. You know, in Christianity, you're not just chosen. You have to like seek God. You have to seek God and know God and then accept God. Very different. Jew, you come out of that Jewish pussy and you're like, I'm chosen. I'm here. I am. Shalom. You know, like it's not truth. It's not true. That's what's been going on in the world. That's what's the normal state of affairs. You know, tribalism. You know, collectivism. You know, there would be no libertarianism without Christianity. None. Not at all. Because no other cultural system puts so much emphasis on the individual to make a decision for salvation. No other no other collective system or system of society was so like keen on like people's individual decision. Like, are you going to make this decision yourself or not? And no one else can make it for you. Okay, that's huge. That's everything to do with all of the Bill of Rights in America. They were all preached at the pulpit from 1760 or from like 1600 to 1750. Like look, for instance, freedom of religion, right? Where did that come from? Christianity. Because why? What happened when some of Jesus's followers left? Did he say, bring those men and have their heads cut off? Or like black, like, how dare you leave me in my congregation? You're gonna go? Fuck you then. You suck. You die. Did he do that? Did he say, bring them back here and torture them? Like Muhammad would, right? Because Muhammad, if you leave Muhammad's religion, he's like, bring him back here, kill him, apostate, cut his head off. But with Christianity, with Jesus, he was like, let him go. I mean, hear that fucking beautiful story with, and we all know this. This is like pure like humanity. Like Jesus has a party. He gets a bunch of wine, bunch of fish, gives it to people. People are like, oh man, look at all this free fish and wine. Woo! And then Jesus says, okay, everybody, enjoy. I'm glad you're all enjoying the food, but here's the reason why I brought you here. And starts preaching, and people are like, man, fuck this guy. He's talking shit. I'm just here for the fucking wine and the fish and the bread. Like, I don't need this. Like, people started leaving. They're like, no, just fucking fuck this guy. Just like my Periscopes. When I started talking about Jesus, people are like, oh, I can't take this. And they walk away. And what did Jesus do? He wasn't like, fuckers, may God smite you. Dad, get them. No, he wasn't like that. He was just like, Father, forgive them. Just move on. Like, and so the people in this country or in this land, the not the Puritans, but the Pilgrims, they saw that. They were like, well, we can't enforce religion. You see, because it's a beautiful thing. So we know that when the Puritans came here, right, that they wanted to have religious freedom. But what happened is when the Puritans came here, they made it kind of like in Europe, where it's like, if you don't follow Puritanism, you're going to die, right? So obviously people started breaking off of that. And they're like, listen, we can't, this is hypocritical. We left England or left Europe just to do the same thing here again. So they're like, look, Jesus never forced anybody to follow him. Neither should we. Same thing with like freedom of press. Jesus never tried to censor anybody. Jesus was never like, take that Pharisee's, take the quill out of that Pharisee's hand and make sure he's not able to record what's going on. Like, no. He didn't pose limitations on it. Muhammad did. Muhammad posed control limitations because he was a warlord, he had an empire to run. Jesus didn't run an empire, It's a beautiful thing. Like, you would think, like, from history, he was some kind of king. He's like, no, he's not a king at all. He was literally like the nicest guy on fucking earth, man. And we killed him in the most brutal fashion. Never forget that. Jesus never hurt anybody, man. He never hurt anybody. All he said was like, I'm the son of God, and I'm here to save you. That's all he said. He didn't say like I'm gonna hurt your mother, or your sister's a whore or something. Like, he didn't say anything like that. He was just like, I'm just trying to tell the truth. All he did was tell the truth. And when a Pilate was talking to Jesus, and he was like, how dare you say these things, and Jesus was like, did I lie? I just, oh man, it's so beautiful. Like, it's just like, you upset all these people. How dare you? You're offensive. Did I lie? It's like, oh shit. It's like that's what matters. Like, did I lie? And they killed them in the most brutal way possible. Like, I mean, you probably saw The Passion of the Christ. And I love when people are like, oh man, Mel Gibson's so violent. It's like, have you read the Bible? Like the crown of thorns. The crown of thorns they gave him, that was because he called himself the king of the Jews. It's like, oh, you're a king? Here's your crown. Oh man. And then they gave him a cloak that was like itchy wool, so he has all these open scars, and they gave him a cloak, and they wrapped it around his neck and his back, and it's like sticking to his back and stuff. We're not talking about like a silk garment or like nice cotton. We're talking about probably like heavy wool or something. It's sticking and itching to his back, and has these open sores. They give him a crown. They go, oh, you're a king. Oh, here's your cross, and then make him walk with it, and just it just goes to show you how humans are evil. We're flawed, man. We need to be saved. We need to be saved from ourselves, because if it wasn't for that, man, nuclear holocaust, that's our fucking destiny as humans, man. Just killing each other, elites controlling us and throwing us towards never-ending war. But we need a savior for that. And he came here, and you deny him every fucking day. Oh, it's okay because you think he's a joke. Well, did you ever look for it for yourself? Did you ever, take the time to, read both sides of the story, to actually look up an author or speaker who wasn't completely against Christianity? Do you ever try to look up a debate and not already have your mindset from the beginning? The reality is this: Jesus Christ, if he was a normal human being, he had every chance and ability to not only rat out people so he can be saved from crucifixion, but he had all the opportunity to run away and find ways out of it. But he accepted his fate with utmost sincerity. He said, I know I'm going to die. This is prophecy. I'm going to be led. Even though there was all these chances he had to leave. Remember, Pilate didn't want to kill him. It was just Pilate was confused. I don't understand these people. I see this man did nothing wrong. And so we're looking at someone who's not someone more than human, man. Someone that was here. None of this had to happen. Jesus didn't have to come here. God is very much likely able to just create a new universe. He could just snap his fingers and this universe is gone, and it would be painless. But he doesn't want to do that. He loves us that much. He wants just like that prodigal son, when he came back. He didn't just say, get out of here, or, okay, you're going to be my slave. You're going to feed my pigs. No, he was give him the robes, kill the fattest lamb, bring him back into the family as if he was my son, as if nothing happened. Come on, we live in this world of evolutionary theory. This kind of stuff shouldn't exist. It really shouldn't exist. We should all be cutthroat. It should be like pagan times. It should be there should be no marriages. It should be alpha males dominating with 20 girls, and then every beta males fighting for a place next to the alpha male to shine his shoes. I mean, that's most of human fucking history. Don't forget that. That is most of human history. Just alpha males taking over everybody else. Christianity allowed to change. Now, that doesn't mean that everything came out of Christianity is great. I mean, the Catholic religion had a lot of problems, right? But we are way better off than we would without it. Many of our ideals of compassion, the Constitution, many aspects of charity would not exist without Christianity. Probably charity wouldn't even exist without Christianity, because we know that the Hindus and the Eastern Asia, they don't give a fuck about anyone outside their family. That's why the Indians have a term that the tears of others, the tears of strangers, are just water. Care only about your family. Who gives a fuck about these strangers? And it's Christianity changed all that shit. Changed it all. What's going on? I'm not even paying attention to this. Your chat isn't loaded on OBS program. What do you mean? I have a YouTube channel. People watching. This is my YouTube channel here. I have a YouTube channel. I'm on a Google Hangout. So if anyone wants to join my chat and have a couple thoughts expressed, go to my Twitter, which is connected to this account. And my second to last tweet has this. So you can just click on that and join. This is lit trippy. What is lit trippy? I like trippiness. Psychedelics, yes. I speak about psychedelics. When it comes to Christianity, psychedelics are a huge part of it, I believe. For the simple reason, look at the Bible and the aspect, the holy anointing oil and how its ingredients. One of them was cannabism. Cannabism is obviously cannabis. I mean, cannabism, cannabis, they all come from the same root word, hemp, right? It was very useful back in the day. This idea, this idea that psychedelics cannot be used. Jesus told you himself, there's nothing that you could put in your body that will defile you. There's nothing you could put in your body that defile you. There's nothing that you could put in your body that will make you sin. Sin is a behavior. Okay. Now, I said in my last stream that I believe that many of these substances should be used for married couples because marriage is a sacrament and should be, should be explained that way. And these compounds are here for a reason. You know, those little plants are little powerhouses of chemical plants, and there's no reason in an evolutionary scheme that a plant would have to make a neurotransmitter, which is a brain chemical, right? Like, why would a plant or a mushroom, let's say, create a brain chemical? Like, it's not poison, you know? Like, there's poisons. Like, I'll give you, like, people think, like, mushroom psilocybin is poison. Here's an example of poison. There's a mushroom out there that wherever it enters your bloodstream, the minute it enters your bloodstream, it does a direct path from wherever it entered to your heart and stops it. That's a poison, okay? That's how poison works. Poison damages you. It doesn't trip you out, you know? So this idea that psychedelics are there as some poison to kind of destroy the human mind, no. What you're there is you're using a tool to help humans appreciate things that they normally take for granted. You're manifesting parts of the mind that you take for granted. And so psychedelics are a beautiful tool for not only mental health, but just regular well-being, because it's the way you're able to orient the values in your have your life. It's like as if it's like, think of it as like spring cleaning, right? Where like normal time, let's say if you want to analogize your mind as a home, you're in one room all the time. And this is your room and you're used to things in your room, but you rarely go into the other parts of your house. And it could be for whatever reason, but you rarely go there. And the problem is when you spend so much time in one place, other parts get neglected and they start to fill with dust and roaches or whatever, right? So what psychedelics do is they help you kind of check out all the rooms of your home. So you're not just stuck in that one room you're always in. You go to this room, and that whole idea of like skeletons in your closet, stuff like that, you confront that. And then you realize like what's important in life and what matters to you. And a lot of all that bad, difficult trip is a good thing. It comes from the fact that, listen, there's something in your life that needs to be said, needs to be like worked on. Like no other drug is able to do that. You sniff some coke, you're just gonna feel fine. You drink alcohol, you're just gonna forget. But psychedelics, if something isn't going in your life too well, and you're kind of aware of it, it will bring that shit up to the surface. Be like, hey, your relationship with this person is really poor. It's like, you normally don't think about it, but think about those last two things you told her. You said something that was really mean. Like, did you think about her perspective in this? Like, these are the kinds of things you will feel on mushrooms in life. You'll be like, damn, was I a good person to my mother? Like, how was I in high school? Like, I must have been, if you were a bully in high school, you're going to think about that. Like, damn, I held that guy ups and down. I put his head in the fucking toilet. Like, you're going to realize, like, that shit is evil. And this was used predominantly in the 50s as a way to get people off of alcoholism. In Saskatchewan, in Canada, in the 50s, they had a program where they were giving people LSD in doses of 500 mics, which is about like the equivalent of like 5 to 7 regular tabs on the street. So a huge trip. And they would put them in this negative headspace and say, like, think about all the negative things you're doing. Think about how you're hurting your family. Think about how you're hurting your body. And so normally, they're drunk, they're like numb to these things, but on this like intense psychedelic experience, they're able to be like, oh my God, I'm fucking up my life. I'm like, I'm not doing things right. I'm hurting my body. And so what we found was that 80% of the people that went through this program after a year were still clear from alcohol. 80%. Compare that to the next best thing, which is AA. AA is not even a third. It's like 30% at best, right? So we had something that had 8 out of 10 people dropping alcohol that were like die-hard alcoholics, like for decades, and just dropping it at the turn of a hat, like just like literally, just like one experience, enough, I'm out of it. And then a year later, still out of it. Like, we just dropped that. We didn't even like continue that line of research. We just said, oh my God, look at these hippies, make it illegal. Even though like the same government that made it illegal was trying to use it as a weapon through MK Ultra in the 50s, but they realized, wow, we really can't use this as a weapon. So they kind of forgot about it. Then it hit the street, and people were like, oh my God, taking acid. Like, whoa, why are we in war? Vietnam didn't attack us, And they're like, oh, we got to stop this anti-war shit. What's the fuel of the anti-war crowd? Drugs. We're going to get rid of that. Kamikaze pilots? No, they didn't. Oh my God. Is that real? Is that real? Do people actually believe that? I've never heard that urban legend that they gave LSD to pilots. No. What they did give a hardcore drug to pilots of the kamikaze round, but it wasn't LSD. It was methamphetamine. Methamphetamine was developed initially by the Japanese for that kind of mission. It was basically to just hype them all up so they're all like, fucking speeding, tweaking balls when they killed themselves. No, it's not LSD. You wouldn't be able to drive or fly a plane on LSD, especially if it's enough. Maybe a microdose, but like if you're on like enough that you could trip and visually like see things, if you can't drive a plane. It'll be See, psychedelics are like alcohol. Like you could be really drunk on alcohol and think like you're okay to drive. You could be like a little high on psychedelics and be like, I'm not even going near that wheel. Like for those of you who smoke, you know what I'm talking about. You get so high, you don't even want to go on the wheel. You're like, I'd rather just wait. It's too scary. It's just too many things. You're too aware of what's going on. Unlike alcohol, it's like a narcotic. It dims your awareness. It's psychedelic manifests the mind. It brings more awareness to you. And it's only illegal because it was helping people think out of the box so that, they're in a staunch mindset of like, the government's always right. And they take a drug, they're like, oh, they have a different perspective. I guess the government can be wrong. And then they just couldn't handle that. That's why Nixon, in his war on drugs, it wasn't a racist thing. Nixon wasn't trying to be racist with the war on drugs. What he was trying to do was xenophobic. He was saying like, there's these hippies and these anti-war people who are like anti-establishment. We need to destroy them. It wasn't so much that we're black or anything, because there were lots of blacks who weren't into that. It was just about squashing anti-authoritarianism. That's what it was about. And of course, it's anti-American, because what's more American than anti-authoritarianism? I mean, this country was based on anti-authoritarianism. We went to the largest authority in the world at that time and said, fuck you, we're going to have our own country. That's why people like in Canada and Australia, you don't have your own countries. The queen is still queen of your country. That's why you call Commonwealth countries. America is not a Commonwealth country because we fought with blood to get those fucking Brits out of our land. And the Australians were just like, or the Canadians were just like, can we have it, please? It's almost like those kids who go to the mall with their parents but don't want to be next to their parents, and they'll tell the parents, can you just like walk like farther down so it looks like I'm walking by myself? You guys know what I'm talking about. And that's like what Canada's like, literally. Canada's just like that. He's like, Canada's telling like the UK, Mom, can you like not walk next to me in the mall? I want to look like I'm walking by myself. Like, that's basically what Canada and Australia are like. They asked the UK, like, can we please just kind of look independent? We want to look like we're independent. We want to look like we're our own country. Like, no, you're not. Not even close to your own fucking country. Anyway, I've talked enough for now. Cheers. Shit. Let me go take a leak. All right. There we go. Cheers. So I think we should switch gear to politics right now, right? I think politics are on the horizon for us. Talked enough about religion for now. I also want to talk a bit about 9/11 too. Kind of tie that into the politics. So when it comes to the 9/11s, the day that changed everything, right? We have a good contingent of the population who are under 25 who do not. No, wait. Explain to me. Talk to me. But there are a lot of people under the age of like 25 who truly don't understand how different the world was on 9/11, and they don't like it. I was there at New York. I lived in New York on Manhattan. I was like 10 miles north on the island of Manhattan, on 116th Street, while, this was in Battery Park City. And so I was there in Manhattan during 9/11. And, if you know anything about New York, it's, biggest city in America. People are always moving, Oh, yeah, that's old. I posted it a long time ago. So, just let me finish what I was saying. I'll get into what Trump said on the day of 9/11. All I was going to say was that was the day that New York is usually like hustle and bustle, like people don't pay attention to each other. But that was the one day that you could literally stop anybody on the street there and just talk to them. Anybody. Just be like, what the fuck, right? You just go up to them and be like, what the fuck is going on? And they're like, yeah, no, this is crazy, right? Like, what the hell's going on right now? This is fucking nuts. And, you can never do that since or then. Like, it was only that one day for like the hours in the afternoon that you were able just to go up to anybody on the street in New York City and just say, what the fuck is going on? And they'll stop and talk to you. Like, that's never going to happen again unless there's, something worse happening. It's never going to happen again where you can just walk up to some random person on the street and be like, hey, it's like, listen, I got somewhere to go. It's fucking New York City. But, I mean, it was like everything stopped, This is a city that everything's moving and hustling and people don't give a fuck. And it's just like, yeah, we've seen it all, yada, yada. That whole day, like, stop working, stop going to school, stop everything, stop, like, everyone just TV. Or if you were down there or near it, you just walked outside to watch the towers, first burn and then collapse. Like, so that was insane. And it's still insane for a lot of people who were there. For people who were there, it's still painful for them, There are people who lost. That's why I really, really get upset when these fucking 20-year-olds come up to me saying, well, nobody died at the World Trade Center, right? Like, if you were in front of me, I would punch you in the face. It would be wrong with me to punch you in the face, but it's like, I know people who like died. I know people who are still fucked over today. Like, I talked to a woman who lost her father like a year ago, and she's still fucked up over it, man. So for you people to say that no one died there, like, just stop it, right? Stop it. Like, I'm not saying you can't question the government, but just if you get good evidence, shut up. There's good evidence. There are people you could talk to. There's DNA. There are real live people that you can talk to that lost their fucking family members. You can't just say that's fake. So it's like, but at the same time, like, yeah, those buildings had explosives in them. Like, that's one thing we have to separate. Like, not every 9/11 truth idea is saying that no people died. It's not egregious. We're saying things like, oh, look at the way the building came down. It came down accelerated 66% of the rate of free fall acceleration. That can't be done with just a gravity collapse where one part of the building starts getting weak and then falls on the other part. It's like there would be resistance. And don't give me this shit about static load and dynamic load. Like, there's a difference. You're talking about static load. This is dynamic load. It doesn't matter. There wouldn't be an acceleration. You're not going to have an acceleration because of one simple thing. There's something called deformation, which is the destruction. And destruction wastes energy, right? So the reason why an object falls, right, when there's nothing underneath it at the rate of free falls, because all the potential energy, instead of being used to break anything, is just used to fall. But if there's something there that the thing has to break as it's falling, it's going to use up the energy that would be otherwise helping it fall at free fall. Okay? So as it's like destroying something, which physics call like deformation or dampening, as it's, that energy is being expended, it slows down. There's not an acceleration, but a deacceleration, or what we call a jolt, a little like momentary, like if it was like on a graph, it'd be like this, right? Like, so it's a jolt, right? Like when you hit a nail on a hammer, when you hammer in a nail, the minute you hit the nail, there's like a momentary, like little blip where the hammer's motion stops because it hits the nail. The energy gets transferred. There's no way that the hammer's just going to keep going and there's no jolt. There's no like kickback, right? I mean, there are kinds of demolition procedures that use no explosives and are instead hydraulic. And what they do is they put a bunch of water hoses that are empty around the steel column. I'm sorry, not steel, concrete columns. And not, these aren't steel buildings, but they put them around these concrete columns, and they'll do it in the middle section, like the middle floors, like the 3 middle floors. And then they'll turn the hoses on. The hoses get tight. They break apart the columns because they're wrapped around them. And then this is called vernage. And then what you get is that top half of the building collides into the bottom half, and each floor takes each other out. But even with that, you see on the graph, if you like graph the fall, there's a jolt. It's not just a straight line like this. There's like blips, like little spikes in the graph, which shows that, okay, it's compressing, hitting. 9/11, there's no. It's just a straight fall. There's a straight line where it should be hitting the floors and causing compression and jolts. It's just a straight drop. That's a problem. And the reason why I talk so much about the physics and not about, I talk about what people did, I name names and stuff. And the problem is there's something called plausible deniability. And the thing with that is that a person may do an objective behavior, but the reason why they do it may be wildly different, right? It may be the same like action, but okay, so for instance, you see someone who's making tea, right? But the reason why they make tea, it could be wildly different. It could be for somebody else. It could be for them. It could be for them because they feel good. It could be them because they feel sick. It could be in order to wake up. It could be to go to sleep. If it's chamomile tea, right? Like there's nothing you could tell about the motivation by just looking at the behavior. So in the same way, when we look at these kinds of like these things that like Donald Rumsfeld did on the morning, or Dick Cheney, like for instance, Dick Cheney, instead of going to the bunker of the White House immediately, he spent 20 minutes in the hallway between the White House and the bunker trying to make a cell phone call and struggling for 20 minutes because he couldn't get reception, even though in the bunker there's tons of phones, right? I mean, it's a fucking bunker. But there he is in the stairwell like, oh man, I can't get a reception here. I gotta be here for 20 minutes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but because of the fact that he can even say that, like, I'm obviously just looking for, you don't understand, that thing was crazy. I wasn't thinking straight. I was just thinking about my loved ones. It's like, of course you could use those excuses, and that just muddies the water. But the beautiful thing about physics is that physics don't have those excuses. Either you're gonna have something conform to the way that physics say, or they don't. That's it. There's no like, oh my God, it was a Tuesday. So don't understand that the law of gravity is a little lax on Tuesday, or everyone was really worried that day. So steel just has a lower melting point when everyone's really concerned at once. It's like, no, it doesn't happen. Physics don't work that way. That's why people like Ryan Dawson, who I love, who I have done great research with 9/11. I hate that with his infighting. He's always like, these damn people focusing on the buildings and building stuff. It's like, listen, you have to start somewhere, Ryan. Okay, and if we can make sure with that there is no doubt left that these buildings had explosives in them, that means that we put pressure on those government officials and others to say, listen, we know there are bombs in this building. You can't just play that bullshit anymore that, like, you didn't know where you were until 10:20 in the morning, or you were trying to get to the bunker but making a phone call in the stairwell that has no reception. That you can't make those excuses anymore when we know there's bombs in this building, and you guys lied to us on several occasions related to that. So that's why we need to focus on the buildings. That's why. And then once we have it without a doubt, that no one can seriously doubt that these buildings were brought down by anything but an explosive demolition process, then we could start going towards those people and Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld and Paul Wolfowitz and start subpoenaing them and then scrutinize them. But we have to have the base first. We have to have that foundation, because without it, we're just going to have plausible deniability, and we're going to be, chasing people's excuses all day. Like, I guess maybe he was confused, maybe he was scared, maybe he was trembling. He couldn't dial the phone correctly. There's tons of things. Like, but now we know there's bombs in the buildings. Who put those bombs in the buildings? And it wasn't the Muslims. It wasn't those Arabs, because we would have seen that. And I already told you in another video who put the bombs in. I know for sure. I mean, I could be doubted, sure, but the best evidence shows it's Acer Elevator. And I love how this person leaves. They're like, "Oh, you're too full of yourself. You think you know?" Ace Elevator, okay? Whatever, fine, just leave. Don't give a fuck about what I'm saying. It's Ace Elevator, okay? I hope you were bots. Anyone who fucking left. Ace fucking Elevator. I love it when right before I say some real truth about like who put the bombs in the building, right? Just fucking leave. Ace Elevator either provide the cover for an internal team or some kind of cover, like a team pretending to be them to come in. Because the idea was they were working on the central column, on the central elevator shafts, and they would have had complete access to all the core columns. And that's what you need access to in order to bring the buildings down. On top of that, another corporation that was working with them to remove the asbestos would have had access to the drop ceiling, which is everything you need to implant explosives. And on top of that, there was fireproofing upgrades that were done on the same floors that coincided with the jet plane impacts, meaning that during that so-called fireproofing upgrade, they could have pre-weakened those areas of the building. So that's going back to what Donald Trump said when he first saw the attack. That's why I always say Trump goes with his gut. Even though he did change his story a couple of days later after people told him to change his story. But, I believe that he probably just said, hey, I'm not an engineer. If they say so, whatever. But his first reaction to the attack, and we'll watch it right now. His first reaction was, oh, shit, this was bombs. Either bombs in the building or bombs on the plane. Like, there's no way, the building was like straight steel. There's just no way it's going to be straight level with the ground and accelerate on the way. It's just impossible. You have to see that happen from a little bit of tiny damage. It just doesn't make any fucking sense. Okay, but you can see that evidence is mounting. I just want to show you real quick. I want to show you I just want to show you the fireproofing upgrades. So I'm going to change this real quick. Fireproofing upgrades. WTC 911. Here it is. Oh, shit. See? So, in the 10 years before, on the first floor, on the first tower, you had the fireproofing upgrades that coincide completely with the plane impacts and a little bit above them. And then on the second building, it coincides, so the two bands are right in between. So it's literally, they coincide with each other, where the plane impacts are and where the fireproofing upgrades took place. So that gives us an explanation of how they could have put those in the building there. I also want you guys to see real quick the way the elevators looked on 9/11, because people always say that it was like straight down elevators. But you can see here that there was no straight elevator connecting all the floors except for this one's tiny service one, and the ones that were there were in a cascading pattern. so that looking like cell phone reception bars, right? And so obviously, there, if remember, between these sets of elevator shafts are these mechanical floors. So it's just like it's not not a gaping hole. There's a bunch of machinery that just blocks it. But even if we made it a gaping hole, there's only one elevator shaft that continuously connects, even though it has ends. It has a bottom as an end. Remember, at the bottom of the elevator shaft, even up here and up here, there's a like a big spring, basically. So it's not going to be a straight down. It's not going to be an open hole any more than any of the other floors. In the same way, every floor is kind of cut off from the other floor. These floors cut off this elevator space from this elevator space, and these floors cut off this one from this elevator space. So this idea that there was like this gaping, like an atrium, right? Like an inner atrium in the building, like a gaping hole, like how you have in a mall where there's like an interior. Like if you've ever been to New York City, the Marriott in Times Square, there's like 50 floors up. It's just like an atrium. It's almost like a building within a building kind of deal. There's nothing like that here. There's no atrium. There's no open space in the center of the building going all the way up. See, but the debunkers and the people who push the official story, they'll tell you that the building was built like a tube within a tube. Doesn't make any sense. It wasn't built like a tube within a tube. It was actually a skyscraper within a skyscraper because it had a freestanding inner structure composed of 47 steel columns that were interlaced and highly redundant, that were all the way to the top, core columns. And then you had the floor trusses, and then the perimeter columns, which itself were also like a freestanding structure of steel. So let's look at the Donald Trump video I talked about so you guys can see it. Even though, like I said, 2 or 3 days later, there's a video of Donald Trump changing his mind about it because he said that people told him about it. People said, hey, this was that this certain experts told them, but you could tell that his gut reaction, along with almost everybody else's at that day, was that there were bombs in the building. Almost everybody that was everyone's gut reaction, including the FBI. The FBI's first theory was that there were bombs in the plane and in the building. Now, the reason why they thought this, in addition to the way the building came down, was also, don't forget, in 1993, there were bombs in the building already. So the fact that the building was already bombed, why can't it be bombed again? Doesn't make any sense, right? Of course it's going to get bombed again. It's just, of course there's a chance that it gets bombed again. It doesn't make any sense. There'll be no chance to get bombed again. But, okay, let's look up this Trump stuff.
Donald, you're probably the best known builder, particularly of great buildings in the city. There's a great deal of question about whether or not the damage and the ultimate destruction of the buildings was caused by the airplanes, by architectural defect, or possibly by bombs or aftershocks. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it was an architectural defect. The World Trade Center was always known as a very, very strong building. Don't forget, that took a big bomb in the basement. Now, the basement is the most vulnerable place because that's your foundation. And it withstood that. And I got to see that area about 3 or 4 days after it took place because one of my structural engineers actually took me for a tour because he did the building. And I said, I can't believe it. The building was standing solid and half of the columns were blown out. I mean, so this was an unbelievably powerful building.
So just hit that for a second. So in 1993, when the basement bombs blew up 7 floors, he says that most of the core columns in the basement were blown away. So just think about that for a second. There is a gaping hole in the core columns in the basement of the building where most of the weight is pressured on, and yet the building had no structural damage beyond that. There was no secondary damage. But yet a smaller hole or comparable hole that's less blown, because remember, it's just a plane flying into it. It's not necessarily blowing up everything in it. It's not going to be a perfect crater like the other one. And it's all the way at the top of the building with maybe about 10 floors above it as opposed to 110. and you're gonna think that that little hole was able to cause the whole building, but not the first bomb in '93. I mean, that doesn't make any sense, and that's what Trump is pointing out here. He's saying that if the '93 bomb took out all these things in the basement with all that weight, then this plane is going to be able to knock out some columns supposedly at the top without any problem. I mean, it just makes perfect sense. If you knock out most of the columns at the bottom, but the structures are good, but you knock out some of the columns at top, but the structure collapses, or the same structure, that doesn't make any sense. And I know you guys know it doesn't make any sense.
He did the building, and I said, I can't believe it. The building was standing solid, and half of the columns were blown out.
It's 93.
So this was an unbelievably powerful building. If you know anything about structure, it was one of the first buildings that was built from the outside. The steel, the reason the World Trade Center had such narrow windows is that in between all the windows, you had the steel on the outside. So you had the steel on the outside of the building. That's why when I first looked, and you had big, heavy I-beams. When I first looked at it, I couldn't believe it because there was a hole in the steel. And this is steel that was, you remember the width of the windows of the World Trade Center, folks. I think you know, if you were ever up there, they were quite narrow. And in between was this heavy steel. I said, how could a plane, even a 767 or 747,
okay,
or whatever.
I disregard all the video you're seeing right now of anything that insinuates fake planes, okay? This is the only video on YouTube that has this. So please forgive the bullshit here that is insinuating about fake planes like holograms or whatever the fucking mouse is dragging and like, I don't understand that. I'm not warranting that. Don't ask me about that. That's bullshit. I've argued with people with that in the fucking street to tell them, shut the fuck up with your no plane theory. Seriously. Anyway, just listen to what Trump's saying. Disregard the bullshit video here.
Whatever it might have been, how could it possibly go through the steel? I happen to think that they had not only a plane, but they had bombs that exploded almost simultaneously, because I just can't imagine anything being able to go through that wall. Most buildings are built with the steel is on the inside around the elevator shaft. This one was built from the outside, which is the strongest structure you can have, and it was almost just like a can of soup.
You know, Donald, we were looking at pictures all morning long of that plane coming into building number 2, and when you see that approach the far side, and then all of a sudden, within a millisecond, the explosion.
No, okay, so obviously this is an optical illusion caused by a low-res camera. What you're looking at here is the debris that's in the building shooting outward. It seems like, you know, at first glance, like it's the nose of the plane, but what happens is, you know, remember, the building was being filmed from all sides. You look at the other angles, you'll see that what happened was the second plane hit the South Tower at a certain angle, not head on directly, so that some of it sprayed outward. And so what you're looking at is the basic, like, the edge of the debris cloud as it comes out. And I know this looks different from that because this obviously looks like a cloud as well, but what this is just heavier materials that are being flung out first behind lighter materials. So, I mean, like I said, if you just look at the same angle, the South Tower being hit from, okay, I'll show you real quick so you can see it from another angle. Okay, right there. You see? You see that? Hold on. Fuck. Watch. See? So there it goes in, right? It goes in a little bit towards, the west, And see this part right here? That is the nose that you saw. But you can see that from this angle, this is the debris I was talking about. There's pieces of plane right there. So that is this. Okay? So, again, if you get good evidence, a good explanation for something, drop it. But no one's ever given me a good explanation for, iron microspheres or nanothermite in the dust, or that the buildings can come down due to gravity and only gravity. Like nothing, no explanation in those camps have convinced me. But things like this have convinced me. And I said, okay, that's obviously this part of the debris coming out of here, and then from there, because the low res camera, it's going to look like the nose of the plane. In the same way that much of the smoke as the towers were collapsing looked like faces, demonic faces. So, I mean,
pops out the other side.
Right. I just think that it was a plane with more than just fuel. I think, obviously, they were very big planes. They were going very rapidly because I was also watching where the plane seemed to be not only going fast, it seemed to be coming down into the building. So it was getting the speed from going downhill, so to speak. It just seemed to me that to do that kind of destruction is even more than a big plane, because you're talking about taking out steel, the heaviest caliber steel that was used on a building. These buildings were rock solid. And, it's just an amazing thing. This country is different today.
yeah.
And it's going to be different than it ever was for many years to come.
Very profound.
So just never forget that our president, the president of this motherfucking country, when he first saw 9/11, he believed there were bombs in the building. Okay, so never believe anyone tells you that these ideas are like Bigfoot. No, this is the normal. Okay, they had to convince us when you know how they say like believe what you see initially. Like this is what we believed initially, and they had to convince us otherwise. Not the other way around, that we believed their story first, and then stupid truthers came, Johnny come lately, and they're just like, hey, did you know there were bombs in the building? And then they had to, convince them of that. No, people first believed bombs, and then the authorities came with the bullshit story of gravity collapse. And it's obvious deception. Wake up, all right? Ace Elevator. LVI, that's the other one. The people who did the asbestos removal, who were able to access the drop ceiling, they also probably were able to put the bombs in. And the security company that had Marvin Bush at the board of directors, Larry Silverstein, who not only who got the lease to Building 7 in the months before 9/11, when he bought the lease, he got a special insurance policy that covered specifically terrorism. And then when the attack happened, he wanted to be paid double the insurance, because he said, I got attacked 2 times, and instead of getting like $2 billion, he wanted double that, and they gave him like halfway in between 2 and double, 1 and double, like 1.5 times the original amount. That's how much they gave him. And then even the insurance company was like, you're nuts to want two times the amount. That's just, remember, he made an initial investment of $100 million by buying the lease to Building 7, right? Purchasing the lease to Building 7. He made oh my God, this is crazy. The money he made back, right, from the insurance was over $3 billion. And he only needed to give less than $1 billion to help rebuild the towers, because most of the money was put in by the Port Authority. So just think about that. So he basically invested $100 million in July, and by December of that year, he was able to get back almost $3 billion. I mean, is that not one of the best investments ever? $100 million for $4 billion within a year. Within a year. Not even talking like within 20 years. No, within a year. Within a year. It's an insane amount. If I told you with $100 million, you could make $4 billion in a year. There's no other way you could do it. But Silverstein did that with his purchasing of the lease and his insurance scheme there. Ridiculous. Trump for truth. Yeah, but like I said, there is that other video where he does take this all back after talking to people, but only take at least his gut. At least his gut is true. That's what we need to understand. That he's running this country by his gut, and his gut is right. Okay, his gut is right. Doesn't matter if he does. He doesn't read. I don't give a fuck if he doesn't read because his instinct is right. Why read? Why muddy his instinct? He's in his mind. He wants to do the right thing. Other people can read. All you need to do is I got to do the right thing, and then you work like that. That's how you lead. Oh man. I want to show you guys some of the best evidence for 9/11 real quick. The seismic evidence on 9/11, meaning the earthquake machines, right? The earthquake detecting machines were able to pick up explosions before the planes hit the towers and explosions before the buildings came down, showing that there were bombs going off. So let me show you that seismic evidence.
Speaking of witnesses of explosions, one of the witnesses was the Lamont Doherty Earth Energy Observatory, 20 miles north. And so these signals, seismic signals, were received. And FEMA and NIST relied on this report that was put out by them. So we have the first plane impact, and there are seismic signals that are received at about the time of that impact. So NIST and FEMA attributes those signal spikes to those very plane impacts. That's true also for the South Tower, which produced a 0.7 magnitude seismic spike. But is that true? Are they due to the plane impacts? Well, the event happens at 8:46 and 26 seconds. But the plane impacts don't happen until 8:46 and 40 seconds, according to the NTSB radar that the 9/11 Commission relied on. That's 14 seconds later. So what could be causing those initial impacts if it's not the planes? And NIST claims that the plane impacts actually occurred 10 seconds earlier. That accounts for a good portion of that. But they actually then go, they're still short 4 seconds. So they go, but NIST goes back and privately contracts with Columbia University, who runs the LDEO, in 2005 to get them to reinterpret their data. And they do. And they move back the entire seismic spike 3 seconds, much closer to the NIST's
That's
unfounded,
totally not without bias.
Plane impact time. So that's the kind of science that we're working with here. Actually, it happens in the South Tower event also, where we have the seismic spike occurring at 9:02 and 54 seconds. But the plane impacts, according to NTSB radar in the 9/11 Commission report, only occur 9:03, 11 seconds. That's 17 seconds later. How are we going to resolve this? Well, NIST comes up with 12 seconds right off the bat, using a series of justifications relying on videos in a very complex calculation, but they're still short 5 seconds. So what do? Again, in the same contract, they move the whole seismic spike back, or get the LDEO, Columbia University, Professor Kim, to move back this seismic spike 3 seconds, which helps them within their margin of error. Wow. Well, what else could be responsible if it wasn't the airplane impacts? Mike Picuro is a witness. He says the whole building seemed to shake. There was a loud explosion. When the two arrived at the sea level, that's 3 stories down in the basement, they found the machine shop gone. There was nothing there but rubble. We're talking about a 50-ton hydraulic press gone. Made their way to the parking garage, but found that it too was gone. There were no walls, and there was rubble on the floor. Couldn't see anything. The steel and concrete fire door weighed 300 pounds, wrinkled up, a piece of a foil lying on the ground. There's other witnesses of explosions in the basement prior to the plane impacts. Let's listen to Willie Rodriguez.
I was a janitor. Like I said, on that day, there was an explosion in the basement, and this is prior to the building got hit by the plane, and then the plane hit.
Think a bomb went up in the lobby first, then a plane hit the building. The bomb hit the lobby first. A couple of seconds in the first plane.
So bombs hitting the lobby, the basement, prior to the planes hitting. Lots of witnesses corroborating this, but also applied geophysicist Andre Rousseau says the frequency of the Raleigh waves attributed by the LDEO to the plane impacts were on the order of only 1 hertz. That's a very low frequency. But aircraft crash impacts have much higher frequencies, 10 hertz, often up to 100 hertz. That's 2 orders of magnitude higher than what was recorded. And yet they're attributed by the LDEO to the plane impacts. Not only that, but these frequencies, these higher frequencies, are actually filtered out by the bandpass filter used by LDEO, which only accepts frequencies 0.6 to 5 hertz. Rousseau says the range of the instruments cited by LDEO does not allow for the recording of such waves by crash impacts. The seismic equipment is designed to detect seismic events like earthquakes and explosions around 1 hertz. This is very important. He says the actual waves generated by the crash had to have been deadened before hitting the ground. I mean, they're more than 1,000 feet up in the air. It's basically hitting a flagpole, right? And so that couldn't have been the case. But how about the actual collapses? There were seismic spikes associated with the time of the collapses as well. In the case of the South Tower, we're talking about a 2.1 magnitude event. And in the case of the North Tower, we're talking about a 2.3 magnitude event. Now, in each of these cases, FEMA and NIST are associating the seismic spikes with the debris hitting the ground. Can that be the truth? Let's look. We have nearly identical collapses, and yet the seismic strengths are quite different. 2.1
60%
in the South Tower versus 2.3 in the North Tower. That doesn't seem like a big difference, but guess what? It's on a logarithmic scale. It's 1.6 times greater in the North Tower. So we can't, we have the same debris hitting the ground in each case. Same style of collapse, or in this case, demolition. So it can't be responsible for 1.6 times the energy. Andre Rousseau says identical buildings and nearly identical collapses can't possibly produce seismic events of extreme different energy releases on an order of magnitude. Well, we also have the concrete floors, floor trusses, gypsum board walls, and the building contents pulverized to dust. So there's no seismic component in the concrete floors because they were pulverized, as we saw, in midair. There's no seismic component, or extremely little, from the steel frame because it's shattered to individual volumes, as we saw, 4 to 8 tons each. And they don't hit the ground all at once, but over a period of 12 to 15 seconds. And they don't hit the ground, most of them at all. They hit a 7-story concrete basement structure. So that's further deadened. They're equally distributed also over the entire World Trade Center superblock. It's not a focused crash. It is a series of pelting of 4-ton objects, which can't produce this 2.3 magnitude quake in the North Tower, 2.1 in the South Tower. So we have the seismic spikes in our effort to try to find what could have produced these spikes. If it wasn't debris hitting the ground. They start at 9:59:04. This is per the original LDEO. analysis, the report that came out that has been made public. The start of the tower's collapse is at 9:58:59, according to NIST. That's 5 seconds earlier. So the debris can't hit the ground in 5 seconds, so we have a problem, right? The debris starts striking the ground 12 seconds after the start of the collapse. So what's providing this initial spike? Well, once again, for the collapses, NIST goes to Columbia University and gets them to move this seismic spike back 3 seconds as well. So that's not science. That's rigging your data. So what responsible for these earlier seismic spikes? Let's take a look at the work of Graham McQueen. 2009, did the Earth shake before the South Tower hit the ground? Well, he looks at a tripod-mounted camera, in this case, which shakes seconds before the collapse of World Trade Center 2.
You also have cameras that shake before World Trade Center 1, too.
We're going to see the camera shake there, and 3 seconds later, the building collapses. So these are tripod-mounted, and you say, well, maybe somebody kicked it, but this is corroborated by other testimonies as well. In the case of the North Tower, we have the seismic spike starting at 10:28 and 30.
So for both towers, tripod-mounted cameras that were filming these towers before they collapsed. In the case of North Tower, there was shaking of those tripod-mounted cameras about 10 seconds before the actual collapse started, and in the South Tower, it happened about 3 seconds before. So in either case, there was shaking happening before there was any visible collapse happening. Okay, and that shows us that there were explosives going off that were shaking the ground, rumbling the ground before any visible damage took place. And the visible damage being connected to the actual internal failures, this progressive, organic natural collapse.
1 second per the original LDEO report. And the tower starts its descent at 10:28 and 31 seconds, 9 seconds earlier. But once again, the debris can't hit the ground in 9 seconds. So what's happening here? It doesn't hit the ground until 12 seconds later. 10, 11, 12. And at 10:28, the heaviest debris hits the ground. So we have a few problems here. That's 4 seconds. Here's the main problem, though. There are very clearly defined P waves, a P wave and an S wave, that arrive at the seismic instruments well before the event starts. In fact, even before the tower starts descending, these P waves and S waves are effectively ignored by LDEO. Curiously enough, they actually show them, but they mention that they're indistinguishable from background noise. But as you see in their graph, they are not indistinguishable at all. So NIST has a time problem, right? So again, in the same contract in 2005, which report remains unpublished, they move back.
Oh, wow. So they never, wait,
3 more seconds.
So that whole contracting and moving of this, that was never published? You see, that goes to show you that the people at Columbia knew they were being harassed in changing the data, because if it was true that the data was wrong, they would have published it already. The fact that it hasn't been published just shows you that they don't want to change it, because it's embarrassing, because everyone's, the peer review is going to be like, why did you change this? There's no reason. And what are they going to say? The government told us? Imagine the peer review is like, well, we should have said that to begin with. Pass.
closer in line with their heaviest debris striking the pavement at 10:28 and 36 seconds. This is cooking the books. That's a big problem. So what could produce these P waves and these S waves? Well, once again, the work of Graham McQueen shows that there's shakes 6 and 10 seconds earlier than when the tower starts descent. This one's more obvious. Take a look at this one. We're going to see there's the big shake, and in this case, 6 seconds, building comes down. So this happens again and again and again. And in the case of the Etienne Sarre film, we have this third tripod-mounted camera shaking, corroborating with eyewitness accounts. And shake is coming up here very clearly. And then, just like I said, like a train running under my feet, firefighters. And then 10 seconds, we have the beginning of the collapse. So some people have suggested, well, the 2.3 is not enough magnitude. Look at the Seattle Kingdom. It was only 4 or 6 stories tall, and it produced a 2.3 magnitude. Well, this is not apples and oranges, folks. Here's a 25,000-ton concrete roof, which falls and impacts the ground all at once. Very different from 4-ton structural steel sections pelting the ground over a period of 15 seconds. It's not the same. And so one of the beautiful summaries of this evidence is in the Consensus 9/11 work. David Ray Griffin, Elizabeth Woodworth, and others have put their hearts into finding the best evidence. Well, point TT7, why did the Twin Towers collapse? The seismic evidence puts all of this together quite well. And they rely heavily on the Andre Rousseau article of 2012, where explosives the source of seismic signals emitted from the New York 9/11. And Graham McQueen's Did the Earth Shake Before the South Tower Hit the Ground, 2009. There are also other excellent works. Seismic Proof, 9/11 was an inside job. Craig Furlong and Gordon Ross.
And so, as a debunker, your job there is not to just say this is bullshit, good day. Your job is to look at those articles we put up there and to say what's wrong with them, to explain in detail what's the problem. But you're not going to do that because, honestly, you would have done it already. Anyway, I don't want to have this go on too long. I'm having less of a discussion these days and more of a fucking monologue. But at least my monologues are on point. So I want to thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. See you later. Bye.